Hey everyone, welcome to day 15 of the V.E.D.A challenge, vlogging every day in April, and my oh my, what a lovely April morning it is. You probably can't really see it that well, but it's an ice storm right now, and I'm here all on my own at the coffee roastery that I work at. I don't think I'm going to be getting many customers today due to this weather, but I've actually had only one so far. Someone decided to brave this weather to get their coffee. But yeah, I figured today would be a great day to kind of educate you guys on the process of roasting coffee, which I currently have a batch going right now, which is what you're hearing in the background. And oh, it is done. So I'm going to get started on the next batch, and I'm going to show you guys how we do it. So I've gotten some of the Colombian here with me. Yeah, so this is our Colombian beans, and this is, get up here, and this is green beans. So this is coffee beans before they're roasted, if I can get it into view here. And what you'll find is a lot of green beans tend to have more of a grassy kind of smell. So they don't smell like coffee at all. Very grassy and earthy smelling. And another thing too is green beans tend to be very hard. Like they're almost like pebbles. Anyways, yeah, like I was saying, the green bean here, green beans tend to be very hard. So like I'm pushing down on this with everything I got, not crushing. And whereas this roasted bean here, you know, you can hear that crack. Usually is easier than this, but it's hard to do at this awkward. Wow, this is being okay. There you go. You can see I somewhat effortlessly was able to crush that, whereas with the green bean I could not at all. And so if you were to try to put that green bean inside of a coffee grinder, you would absolutely destroy it. Now that I've weighed out about 2 kilograms of the coffee, the green bean coffee, I now just need to make notes about all of this. So things we note is the date, the name of the coffee, how much we're putting into the machine, which is pretty much always 2 kilograms, which roast number this is since the last time we've cleaned certain parts of the machine, because you know you obviously want to clean the machines every so often so that it doesn't get dirty, obviously, but it can affect the quality of the coffee coming out. A lot with coffee roastering is that you have to really closely monitor the temperatures and that sort of stuff. So we keep track of what temperature the machine is when we start the roast, what temperature the room is, because that can affect the coffee. I'll show more of that later when I put the beans into the machine. And then the SRT is what temperature the machine reaches when we drop the beans into the machine. So at this stage of the process, what I'm going to be doing is start the machine to start preheating, and while it's preheating, I'm going to be going through the green beans here, trying to pick out defects, sort of. With the high quality beans, you don't tend to get as many defects, but you know, there are still some that kind of slip through. So like right here, well, you can kind of see there's like a brown spot on the bean, and that will kind of affect the quality of the coffee. Oh yeah, and also looking for beans that might be too big or too small, because smaller beans will tend to roast a lot faster, and larger beans will tend to roast a lot slower. So obviously smaller beans will burn up, will get burnt, and having a burnt bean in coffee can really affect the coffee quite a bit and make it very bitter and bleh. With higher quality beans, they'll kind of screen them and make them within the same size sort of thing so that you get a very nice even roast. Alright, so here I have the roaster that we use to roast all of our coffee beans in. Like I said, it does about 2 kilos. It's a very small roaster compared to what you typically find in a more commercial roaster. We mostly just do small batches for people to use at home sort of thing, so we don't supply any cafes or anything. If we were to actually supply a cafe, we would probably need to upgrade to a much bigger roaster. It's powered by electricity, so it's an electric roaster, I guess. You'll tend to find in a lot of the bigger ones, there are some electric ones, but you'll also find one powered by gas, propane, I guess. I don't remember what some of the other ones are. But the nice thing is that with this smaller roaster, what we're able to do is we're able to hook it up to you can't really see it on camera here, but it's standing on top of a afterburner. And that's something you can't really get with the large roasters. So with a lot of large roasters, they'll just have to kind of vent a lot of the fumes and smoke outside, which surprisingly is not very pleasant. Roasted coffee is a very nice smell, but the process of roasting coffee is not so much. Like I said, unroasted coffee, green beans, they tend to have a very grassy smell. And once you start roasting them, they'll tend to have like a campfire smell. And at times it can smell very... it smells like marijuana. And then like at a certain stage, you'll kind of start to turn into like a baked bread kind of smell. But there's also some beans that when you're roasting them, they'll kind of have more of a chemical smell. Even though like no chemicals are used in anything, you'll just kind of smell like it. And a lot of people tend to not enjoy that smell. I'll talk more when I get to it a bit later, but when I put the beans in, the first thing I'll be checking is, because the beans are much colder than the machine is, the temperature here will start to drop. And then the lowest temperature it reaches is what I'll write down, and I'll write what time, and that gives me a good idea of how quickly or how slowly the beans are roasting. Because once it hits that temperature, it'll be going towards the stage 2 temperature, and then once it hits stage 2 temperature, yeah, after 3 minutes it'll go into the cooling process. If the temperature that it hits after I dump the beans in is too low, that means it'll take longer to hit the stage 2 temperature, which means the beans will turn out darker. If the temperature is too high, then beans will turn out, the beans will hit the stage 2 temperature will hit it quicker, which means the beans will come out a bit too light. So it's kind of a craft in that sort of way. You gotta kind of monitor it and I'd make adjustments as it's roasting. Now I just need to start the machine. There we go. And I just need to start picking through the coffee beans, finding all the bad ones. Oh, hey, there's one. Already got one. Yeah. All right. Beans are now in the roaster. So I just need to keep an eye on the temperature here. Once it hits that lower temperature, then I'll make a note of it, and then I'll wait till it hits stage 2. Yeah, here's a good little view of the beans when they're first in the machine. You can see they're all green and stuff right now, and as the process, as it goes along, it'll start to slowly turn more and more brown, and we're looking for a nice even brown. Temperature is it's 86 right now, so it's, yeah, I think it's gonna hit right on the dot, or I would hope it hits, sort of thing. So at this point, beans hit about 84 degrees at 2 minutes and 50 seconds, which is very nice. That was a big gust of wind, just knocked something over out there. So at this point in time, mostly just waiting. Once it gets up to around 160 degrees, it will hit what is called first crack. So as the beans are, that's a little air pulse in there. As the beans are warming up, the gases inside the beans will start to heat up, and you know, as gas heats up, it starts to expand, and then at some point the beans will crack open, and at that point you can pretty much grind up the beans and make coffee out of them. That's kind of how we control how dark the beans go. So if we're doing a very light roast, we'll try and hit stage 2 as the beans are reaching first crack. And then if we're going for a darker roast, we'll wait like maybe 10 seconds after it hits first crack for a dark roast. And yeah, like that's where a lot of the craft comes in, is like just a few seconds can be the difference between a medium roast and a dark roast, sort of thing. Alright, so just hit first crack right now, or just a moment ago it hit first crack at around 161 degrees at 13 minutes and 6 seconds, and it just went into stage 2 at 164 degrees at 13 minutes and 20 seconds. So this should be a pretty nice medium dark roast. Usually we don't need to keep track of that sort of stuff, as long as we know what temperatures we set them at, and and as long as the lower temperature after we put the beans in is within like 85 degrees, we can usually just leave it and let it do its thing. But it's good to kind of keep an ear out on it and keep an eye on the temperature. Just because like occasionally something strange can happen, like maybe it'll hit first crack a little earlier or a little later. We would have to adjust the stage 2 temperature accordingly. If we were to keep roasting the beans well past first crack, it will eventually hit a second crack, and that's kind of when you're getting into the really dark beans. So dark that you kind of lose a lot of the personality of the beans. Because like I said, we try to go for premium grade beans that each kind of have their own characteristics to them. So we try not to go dark with them. We try not to go into when it goes into second crack. So it's now in the cooling phase, so that's kind of why you hear it winding up now. The temperature is still going to go up just a little bit, but it will start to go down again, and
After about 10 minutes, I believe, it should be good to go, and then I'll dump it into the bin and cool it outside of the machine a little bit more, and then I'll start packaging it.
Alright, so coffee's all done. See, it's turned a nice brown color. And now I just need to go over here, be all like, start spinning. And then as it's spinning, just open up the door and, excuse me, there we go. Nice. So that's actually a very, where's my, there it is. Yeah, that's a very nice medium dark roast. So one question I do tend to get quite a lot here at the store is like, what's the best way to enjoy coffee, sort of thing. And for that, it's really just, a lot of that can really be personal preference. Like if you see behind me here on the shelf, we've got tons of brewing systems, from French presses to pour overs, and on the other side there we've got padrinis and stuff like that. There are many different ways to enjoy coffee, and it's hard to say which one's the best, because yeah, it's personal preference. To get if you're looking for a really great coffee, you know, you can't really beat coffee that's been recently roasted. So freshly roasted coffee. Buying the coffee as whole beans and not grinding them at the store is best. Like I'd recommend picking up a grinder and grinding your coffee as you need it. Preferably a burr grinder, not a blade, because burr grinders will give a more consistent. They'll give a more consistent grind, whereas a blade will kind of be kind of all over the place, and you can't really adjust the grind level with blades, as far as I know. And you can pretty much pick up a burr grinder, electric burr grinder, from any hardware store for about $30, so it's not really much of an investment. And you know, people are always asking like, how long do the beans last? In the packaging that we use, so these are like Ziploc bag sort of thing. Once we put the whole beans in and heat seal it, it could last for a few months before it starts to lose any of its flavor. And that's just like losing its flavor. Like, before it expires, probably like a year. Once you open the bag, we usually recommend that people go through it in about 2 weeks before, again, it starts to lose its flavor. And then once the coffee's been ground, like pretty much after a day, the grinds will lose a lot of its flavor. So that's why we say, like, grind the coffee as you need it, sort of thing, if you want to get the most out of it. There's nothing really wrong with drinking coffee that's a month old, or ground coffee that's a few days old, but like I said, you're not going to get much of the flavor out of it. That's what you tend to find with a lot of grocery store. Most of that coffee is either ground already, or it's been sitting on the shelf for a few months, or it's been in the warehouse for a few months before shipping out. So that's kind of why we tend to put like the roast date and the roast level on the back of the bag, so that people know how fresh the coffee is. Actually storing them, airtight bag, or in a mason jar. We keep a lot of beans in mason jars here. Air is the main enemy for that sort of thing. Keeping it in a cool, dark place, or room temperature, like in a cupboard or something, that's best. People have asked if it's good to keep coffee in a freezer, which not really, because whenever you take the coffee out of the freezer, you'd have to defrost it before using it, and the defrosting process can have an effect on it. I don't know the exact science, but it's best to just keep it in a cupboard in an airtight container. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. This is probably gonna be a long video, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it and maybe you learned something new. Learned something about coffee. You know, if you have any questions about that sort of stuff, feel free to leave them below. I might do another kind of episode on this sort of stuff later on, answering those questions. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. We'll see. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you tomorrow for day 16 of the V.E.D.A challenge. Until then, farewell, goodbye. I can't do my usual kind of rolling away from the camera thing here. Yeah. Oh yeah, one more thing. Today is the day that I believe Steve is heading back to England, so Steve, safe travels. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully this storm hasn't grounded your flight or anything. And yeah, we'll see you next time that you're in the Canada land, my friend. I'll see you in another life, brother.